What's going on, everybody? This is Lady Luck here again, and I am going to be going over some key updates from the Air India 171 plane crash. They do have a preliminary report that is out and complete. Before we get into that, I want you guys to make sure you are subscribed to the Lady Luck Club, hit that like button, engage in the comments, leave me your thoughts below on what you think, and share this content. I also have memberships that you can also obtain. Please consider becoming a member today, where I have exclusive lawsuit filings and cases and um, court hearings and things that I go over that are very difficult to find online. So consider becoming a member. Plus, our members only live are a great opportunity just to kind of sit back and be able to speak with you guys and have a safe space to be able to share more thoughts on things that are going on that you might not want to talk about on the public platform. That's what it's all about here in the LLC. So before we get into that, you guys see Captain Steeeve video. He did a recap. He is a airline pilot himself, well respected, has great content, full channel. You guys make sure you check out his channel, Captain Steeeve, Steeeve. And I'm a subscriber and I've already liked the video. And share your thoughts as well and support his content. But I wanted to kind of go over the preliminary report after we check out the video here. It is a bit lengthy. I don't want to make it too long for you all. So I just want to make sure that we do a quick recap. And then we're going to go over the preliminary report itself. So let's check out what Captain Steeeve has to say in his recap, and then I'll go to the preliminary report. Let's get to it.
One has just been released. It was released at midnight on Friday night at the very last minute to the general public. We've taken last night and this morning to go over all the information in it and to kind of assemble it in a way that we can explain to you from a cockpit perspective, almost a second-by-second delineation of what took place inside that cockpit. I did a video yesterday talking about the Wall Street Journal air current and the Reuters report that talked about the fuel control switches being placed to cutoff. That is consistent with what is in this report. In addition to that, there is some amplifying information about the timing of all of that. You can draw your own conclusions. In a preliminary report like this, they don't generally come to a definitive reason for why something was done. They just tell you the somethings that were done, and then you can draw your own conclusions. Now, the final report may be a year or two away. In that report, many times they will go to the why part of it and try to come up with a definitive reason for why. But I think it's pretty clear from this report exactly what happened in that cockpit on June the 12th. So let me begin at the top of the report.
And the cockpit is the cockpit voice recorder. That's part of the black box that was recovered from the crash scene. So he has gone into depth about the differences between the cockpit voice recorder and the diagnostics that is picked up from the plane itself, as well as there was a landing I think rack. It was I don't want to misquote it, a device that dropped that he noted in a video, a homemade video that was submitted, and he was able to pick that up to discern kind of what was going on with the plane at the time to determine that the electricity in the plane had gone out. They had lost electric function. So just seeing the content that he has and being able to explain based on his experience and knowledge has really been able to, for me personally, help me understand the crash a little bit better. But let's keep going. Let's get to it.
And then I'm going to amplify some of the information for you. It's absolutely fascinating, right? And especially the conversation back and forth between the two pilots, because now we have the cockpit voice recorder information. That's something that Reuters and Wall Street Journal didn't have. So the background is this: on June 12th, 2025, that was just last month, Boeing 787 operated by Air India out of Ahmedabad to Gatwick Airport crashed about 60 seconds after takeoff. It was AI 171. We know all that information already. They assembled a team almost immediately. And over in India, it's the AAIB. It's their Aviation Investigation Board. Then they brought in the NTSB from the United States. You wonder, well, why did they do that? Well, because it was a Boeing product that was involved. And so they'll always bring in the country of manufacturer.
Anytime it's involving an American based product or plane or anything that is malfunctioned, a part of the crash itself, or even, rare times where it involves like some sort of high dignitaries or delegates, Americans in the crash, they more than likely will reach out to the US and ask the NTSB to get involved, to aid in the investigation. So
origin. So they invited the NTSB in. In addition to that, there were citizens on board from the UK, Portugal, and Canada. So they also invited the Canadian TSB and some others in
yep.
to help assist with the investigation. The final team that was
Yeah, that's what I was just saying as well. They see, so if you have, Americans on the plane, let's say they will invite them. Just because, I mean, they're Americans, just like with the Canadians. It's kind of a common courtesy. So you invite the other countries, if some of the passengers were from those other countries, and especially, when you're talking about more than just one or two, and depending on who they are, they will definitely invite other countries in to either just observe or to be able to provide input or aid in the investigation, altogether, even if it's not involving an American part or plane. It can be Americans on the plane, and they will still get an invite to participate. The NTSB
put together consisted of the NTSB from the US, technical advisors from Boeing, and GE. Why GE? GE was who produced those engines. So the engines on the wings were General Electric engines, and the FAA. So all of that team with all the other players put together were assembled. The next page tells us who was in charge of the investigation. All of the local Indian authorities with all of their names are listed. And then underneath of it is a very interesting paragraph. And I'm going to read this next sentence and a half to you because I don't think anybody else has highlighted this or is talking about it, but I think it's absolutely germane to the root cause behind what actually happened in this crash. And here it goes. Experienced pilots, engineers, aviation medicine specialists, aviation psychologists, and flight recorder specialists have been taken on board as subject matter experts to assist in the investigation.
Wow.
Why in the world would they bring in an aviation psychologist to help with this investigation? I think that's absolutely critical and important to where this is going. I think a year from now, or whenever the final report comes out, I think the aviation psychologist is going to be a huge player in the final conclusions. What this tells me is this: once they downloaded the information from the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, it was clear that one of the two pilots, one of the two human beings in that cockpit, placed those fuel control switches from run to cut off. And so, therefore, I think having a psychologist involved in this conversation is hugely important. That's one of the reasons why we're going to open up a conversation on this channel going forward.
Wow.
About the mental health and certainly the emotional health of pilots. In fact, we're going to do an interview here in just a few minutes after I get done with this video. We're going to bring in Dr. Charlie Carreri. Charlie is the absolute expert in this area of mental health for pilots. He is a pioneer in the field. He started a program called Project Wingman at my airline. Project Wingman now has been exported to many airlines around the world. Charlie is the guy that has spearheaded that effort. And in fact, Charlie sat on the investigation board for the German wings crash, which is very similar in scope to this crash here. So you want to hear from Charlie. Look for that interview later on this week. But let's continue on with the preliminary report. Over on the next page, it says this: all applicable airworthiness directives and air service bulletins. The difference between those two is this: a directive is something like a recall on a car. It's got to be done. So they will schedule the maintenance on that, and they will replace whatever it is. A bulletin is just kind of a heads up. There may be an issue. Take a look at it if you want to. It's not any big deal. It's no safety of flight, but it's a bulletin, and we want you to take a look at it. There was an airworthiness bulletin directed about a 737 issue related to the fuel.
I will say this about a bulletin. The bulletins, to me, should be a matter of just making sure that there's some level of accountability. You could give a bulletin out, but if they have an option to look at it, what makes them at least be held accountable for reviewing the information? Because what if it's a scenario where that bulletin becomes more of a warning or a recall? You still have humans going through these investigations, looking at defective parts, looking at, manufacturing errors, looking at these things. What if someone still gets it wrong? And that's something I always ask, and hopefully even the experts continue to ask through these types of investigations. What if someone still drops the ball and gets it wrong? So how do you hold everyone accountable for at least, making sure that they read and take the bulletin seriously? Because what if they don't? What if they ignore it? And then it becomes more of an expansive problem than it was initially intended to be. One isolated incident could become more expansive and become a bigger problem and bigger issue and then lead up to a recall. And then you're talking about now forcing, these airlines to have to make changes that will cost money, cost labor, cost time, all because they didn't look at a bulletin either. So that's just my take on that. I'm in agreement with what he's saying, but I'm just going kind of deeper into the what if and how do you hold them accountable.
Control switches, and they lay it out down here in the next paragraph. The FAA issued special airworthiness information bulletin, all right, that's the lesser of the two, on December 17th back in 2018 regarding the potential disengagement of fuel control switches in the locking feature portion of them. The bulletin was issued based on reports that operators of Model 737 airplanes, this is not the 787, but they are a similar type switch, the 737 airplanes, that the fuel control switches were installed, keyword, with the locking feature disengaged. All
Wow.
right, so let me show you a picture now on the screen of what the locking feature is. It's just a little piece of metal that's flat on one side and it's rounded on the other. The switch now that is spring-loaded gets grasped by the pilot's hands. It gets pulled out and it gets placed on top of that little flat piece of metal. When the two engage, that's the detent that holds it in place. And it can't jiggle out. It can't vibrate out. It stays in there. Why? Because it's spring-loaded into position, but it's also held by that piece of metal. If that whole mechanism were installed upside down, which it could be, you couldn't actually put the fuel control switch into the run position. Why? Because it would slide off every time. It wouldn't lock into place. It would slide off. So if it was installed backwards, you would know that immediately. Apparently, they had some installation problems. This is just my theory on what this is talking about. It was installed probably backwards or improperly, and they knew right away. Was that an issue on the 787 and Air India 171? No, it wasn't, because it's been working just fine. There were no issues with it as far as we know from any report, official or unofficial. So with that being said,
yeah, I was stick with, as far as we know, because I mean, if you're talking about an installation issue, and let's say there was no trigger to give warning to that, I mean, it's one of those things where it's black or white. Either it's installed, backwards, or it's not, because it should be a trigger warning, right, to give you an indication that this is malfunctioning. And when they look at it, they should then be able to detect, to discern and detect that it was installed backwards. So that should not be a gray area. It should be a definitive, we know it is, or we know it is not installed incorrectly. I'd hopefully that would not have been the problem. But if it were, I mean, it speaks volumes, especially if it was not reported and is being perceived to have been installed correctly. When in actuality, there's a chance it may not have been. That's just kind of, I guess my 2 cents on that, and saying that, maybe it is or isn't. That's not something I would want to hear anybody have any gray area with. I'm sorry. That's not a gray area for me. That's a black or white issue. It's installed correctly. It's not installed correctly. If it's not, a trigger warning should be installed to indicate that before you even take off. When you cut the plane on, it should be a light indicating this is not installed correctly. I would hope that would be the case. That's just me.
Take that for what it's worth, all right? But there was some wiggle room put in here for the fact that the fuel control switches might not have locked or engaged properly. I don't think that was an issue at all in this incident. Now, continuing on, I want to take a look now next at, and there's lots of information here about the crash and how the airplane landed and what buildings it hit and what part of the airplane hit first and second and all that.
Okay, so I want to just pause there. He has definitely great content here, and I take everything what he says, seriously. I do go back and read and do a little bit of research for myself as well. But I enjoy Captain Steeve's commentary, and I enjoy the way he breaks the information down to a point where, the common person who's not in aviation at all can understand what he's saying. So you guys make sure you check out the full video there. I do want to switch over to and this is just, like I said, me doing some of my due diligence with the preliminary findings. And he was reading through the full report, but I just wanted to kind of touch on the outline here. June 12th, Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner crashed just 30 seconds after takeoff, claiming 260 lives, leaving one survivor. The key findings from the preliminary report, of course, he was speaking on the fuel cutoff switches moved to cutoff position. And that is kind of what the psychologist is going to be kind of speaking on in terms of the actions made by the pilot. When you're doing these investigations, you're looking at human error. I mean, because humans are flying the plane. So you do need to look at human error. You need to look at what the mental thought process was for the pilot and the co-pilots and everyone in the cockpit at the time, and why they made the decisions. Was it a mistake? Was it intentional? Was it a matter of just not being educated or understanding, the plane itself, or a misunderstanding on procedural issues regarding manufactured parts? If something goes wrong, you pull out the manual. If you're following the steps in the manual, is it effective, and do you get the results that you need? um Planes are supposed to be built to where even if you have an issue happen, it should be able to recover, but you can have human error that could facilitate that problem to become more worse. And that's where you need to understand the psychology of what was going on in their minds at that time. For it to crash 30 seconds after takeoff, I mean, that's alarming. But if there is more human error involved, here's where the psychologist is going to play a bigger role, in helping everyone to understand what they may or may not have been thinking at the time. And that's based on, the conversations in the cockpit. So the second main point is, of course, the cockpit confusion captured on voice recorder. The cockpit voice recordings revealed a moment of confusion between Captain Sumit Sabharwal, a seasoned pilot with 15,600 flight hours, and First Officer Clive Kunder with 3,400 hours. One pilot was heard asking, "Why did you do the cutoff?" To which the other responded, "I didn't." This exchange deepens the mystery as it suggests neither pilot intentionally shut off the fuel. Experts, including U.S. aviation safety specialist John Cox, emphasized that the switch's design makes accidental movement unlikely, raising questions about human error or other factors. So, hence the psychologist. No evidence of mechanical or design flaws. So far, the preliminary report found no immediate evidence of mechanical failure or design flaws in the Boeing 787-8 or its General Electric Gen X engines. All applicable airworthiness directives and service bulletins were complied with, and the aircraft's maintenance records showed no defects related to the fuel control switches since 2019. So basically, they go through, they do the inspections, they've maintained. I mean, 2019 is what, 2025, 6 years. I don't know what the time frame has to be before something's replaced, but with these parts, it's not something, hopefully, that is built and designed to have to be replaced, within a short number of years. You want something like that to last. You don't expect the wear and tear on it either, to lead it to have to kind of be replaced every 5 or 6 years. So the next issue was the emergency systems deployed. Closed circuit TV footage and flight data revealed that the aircraft's ram air turbine, the RAT, that is what I was trying to think of earlier. I think I said PAR. My apologies for that. RAT, the ram air turbine, a backup power source deployed during the initial climb, indicating a loss of primary power. The landing gear also failed to retract, and the aircraft maintained the wings level, nose up attitude before crashing into a medical college hostel, causing multiple explosions. These signs point to a catastrophic systems failure triggered by the fuel cutoff. So somehow the fuel was cut off, and based on the CVR, the pilot, the captain, nor the co-pilot, they didn't cut it off. They didn't cut off the engine power. No one initiated that. So that is the rat also was, it's like a little small wind, like almost like a little windmill type of turbine. It gives power to just the main um parts of the plane that needs to function in the event of a fuel cutoff. And that is what Captain Steeeve notated in a homemade video that was posted to the internet. Someone was, you know, I think on the third, fourth floor of a building, and they recorded the plane, and he noted and caught the rat. I don't know how he did it because I I'm not a pilot either, but he was able to catch it that fast. I could barely see it. So even when he pointed it out, I was still like, what is he talking about? But the rat is what he pointed out accurately and said, okay, that was an indication of the of fuel failure. So just total loss of power here. And then of course sabotage not ruled out. India's civil aviation minister confirmed that sabotage is among the possibilities being explored. While the report did not conclude the cause of the fuel switch movement, the lack of an emergency requiring engine shutdown and the pilot's confusion have fueled speculation. The investigation continues to analyze the black box data, cockpit voice, and flight data recorders recovered on June 13th and 16th, with data successfully downloaded in Delhi. So there's going to be, of course, more investigations to come, and you guys can check out this article. This is renews.tv. I just did a quick search on it. This was just a great breakdown outlining just the main points here. And of course, you have 53 British, 7 Portuguese, and 1 Canadian, 169 nationals, 12 crew members, 230 passengers, totaling to 260 with 1 survivor here. And then of course, Canada and the US, India, I think Great Britain, they're all involved in the investigation. So you have multiple countries that are, collaborating and aiding in this. So hopefully it doesn't take a year, but you would rather this be done right and get the answers that you need as opposed to it being rushed, and then you're still left with more questions than answers in the end. I hope you guys find this summary to be helpful to you all. There's a lot more information out there that you can report research, and I'm going to continue to report on this as well and give updates as they come out. Um, Anticipating, of course, the full um, and reports analyzing the cockpit and the flight data recorders. I'm definitely anticipating that being you know something that's going to reveal a lot more. So we will be reporting on that, and we're going to continue to monitor this crash. It was absolutely horrific. My hearts and heart and prayer and thoughts go out to the families and even to the survivor. Let's pray for him and make sure that he's okay, that he gets the help that he needs. My last reporting, the survivor was, dealing with that survivors like that remorse guilt. He shouldn't have to. That's not something that anyone. It should be a blessing to be able to walk out of that situation. He'll be able to aid in the investigation, give an account of what he experienced and what he heard and what he can recall. But unfortunately, people do have survivor's guilt, and that's something that he's definitely going to need a lot of help and prayer with. So we want to keep all of that in mind, and I try to be mindful of that um, whenever I'm even researching this information, and especially stay mindful of that when I'm reporting this to you guys, because there were lives involved that were lost, and it is a very, very difficult. Um, it's a difficult time. Anytime someone loses loved ones, it's hard to deal with, and I can speak for myself, my personal life with that. So thoughts and prayers out to the families that lost loved ones. And we will continue to monitor this. And until the next one, Lady Luck Club out. Deuces.